Subscribe to Tales of Revenge channel for new revenge stories daily. My name is Ethan Miller. I am 37 years old, and I live in Portland, Oregon. My life before everything went sideways was pretty good, or at least it felt that way at the time. Looking back, it's easy to see the cracks. But when you are living it, you tend to ignore the little signs, the ones that tell you something is not quite right, something is fundamentally wrong. I had a nice apartment in the Hawthorne area, not too big, but cozy enough for one person, maybe two. It had big windows that let in the soft gray light that Portland is famous for, or maybe infamous is a better word, depending on your mood. The rain here is relentless sometimes. But I didn't mind it, I actually liked it. Felt like a clean slate every day, a fresh start. I worked as a graphic designer, mostly freelance projects for small businesses and startups. It paid the bills and gave me flexibility. I could work from home, which was great, because I liked being in my own space, surrounded by my books and my plants. Yes, I am one of those guys who talks to his plants. Don't judge me, they listen better than most people I know anyway. My life was simple. I had a routine: wake up, make coffee, check emails, work out, go for a walk, maybe meet a friend for a drink or dinner, and then back home to watch a movie or read. I wasn't a party animal. I wasn't chasing fame or fortune. I just wanted a peaceful life, a comfortable life with someone I loved. That someone was Sarah. We had been together for 3 years, and we were engaged. We were planning our wedding. It was set for the following summer. We were thinking something small outdoors, maybe near the Columbia River Gorge. Something simple, elegant, just close friends and family. Sarah was amazing, or so I thought. She was beautiful, smart, funny, and we just clicked. Our conversations flowed easily. We liked the same movies, the same food, the same slightly weird sense of humor. She made me feel happy, complete, like I had finally found my person, the one I was meant to be with forever. We talked about our future a lot, about buying a house, maybe having kids, eventually about growing old together. It all felt so real, so certain. It was the most secure I had ever felt in a relationship. My parents lived in a small town in southern Oregon, and they loved Sarah. They thought she was perfect for me. My friends liked her too. She fit seamlessly into my life. It felt like a puzzle piece falling into place. Everything just fit. I trusted her completely, 100%, without a single doubt in my mind. That's the scariest part, looking back, how blind I was, how utterly naive. The problem started when I had to go away for work. A big project came up. It was a 3-month contract with a company based in Seattle. It was a great opportunity, a chance to work on something significant and boost my portfolio. Plus, the pay was really good. We needed the extra money for the wedding and potentially a down payment on that house we dreamed of. Sarah was supportive, or she seemed to be. She said she would miss me terribly, but she understood it was important for my career, important for our future. She promised to visit me in Seattle on weekends. I promised to drive back to Portland whenever I could. We said goodbye at the train station. It was raining, of course, a typical Portland drizzle. We hugged and kissed for a long time, neither of us wanting to let go. She had tears in her eyes, and I felt a lump in my throat. It felt like we were saying goodbye for much longer than 3 months. But we had our future planned, our wedding date, said our love felt strong enough to bridge any distance, any time apart. That was the biggest lie of all. The first few weeks in Seattle were tough, adjusting to a new city, living in a temporary apartment, focusing on the demanding project. But I talked to Sarah every day. We texted constantly, shared photos, videos of our days. It felt like she was still right there with me. She visited the first weekend like she promised. It was great seeing her, exploring Seattle together. It felt like a mini vacation, a reminder of what we were working towards. But after that first visit, things started to change subtly, at first almost imperceptibly. She started canceling visits, saying she was busy with work or had plans with friends. The texts became less frequent, less enthusiastic. She seemed distant, distracted. When we talked on the phone, there were pauses, silences. She would sometimes sound annoyed if I called at an inconvenient time. I tried not to think the worst. I told myself she was just busy, that long distance was hard on everyone, that things would go back to normal once I was home. I kept working, kept sending her photos of things I thought she would like, things I saw that reminded me of her, things that made me think of our future. But the responses were lukewarm, if they came at all. Then the whispers started, not directly to me, but through mutual friends. You know how gossip travels, it's like a toxic cloud. A friend mentioned seeing Sarah at a bar with someone else. At first I brushed it off. Maybe it was a work colleague, maybe just a friend. But then another friend said something similar, and then another. Each comment was like a little pinprick, a tiny wound that started to ache. I asked Sarah about it. She got defensive, angry. She said I didn't trust her, that I was being paranoid, that she was just trying to live her life. While I was away, that I was being controlling. I backed down. Immediately. I apologized for doubting her, because the thought of her actually cheating on me was too painful to bear, too much to handle. But the doubt was planted like a toxic seed, and it grew every day I was away. It grew with every canceled call, every missed text, every vague excuse. My gut was screaming at me, but I was so invested in our future and the life we had planned that I ignored it. I pushed it down. I told myself I was being silly, that Sarah loved me, that she would never do anything to hurt me. The project in Seattle finished, and I drove back to Portland filled with a mix of excitement and apprehension. I was eager to see Sarah, to hold her again, to finally be back home. But the nagging doubt, the little voices in my head, wouldn't stop. I called her when I was about an hour away. She sounded surprised, maybe even a little flustered. When I said I was almost back, she said she was at her place and would see me soon. I drove straight to her apartment, building, my heart pounding in my chest. I had a key, of course, a symbol of our trust, our closeness. I parked the car and walked up the steps, my hand shaking slightly as I put the key in the lock. The door opened, and I stepped inside, calling her name softly. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. It was usually full of life, full of her things, her scent, but it felt empty, sterile. And then I saw her shoes by the door, but another pair of men's shoes next to them. My blood ran cold. I walked further into the apartment, calling her name again, louder this time, my voice trembling. And then I heard sounds coming from the bedroom, soft murmuring, then laughter. My feet felt heavy like lead, but I kept walking, drawn towards the sound that was tearing my world apart. I pushed the bedroom door open, and the sight that greeted me was like a punch to the gut. It knocked the wind out of me. It stole my breath. Sarah was in bed with another man. They were tangled together, laughing, carefree, completely oblivious to the fact that their world was about to implode. My world already had. They looked up, startled, their eyes wide with shock. Sarah's face went white as a sheet. The laughter died instantly. The man scrambled to cover himself. Sarah pulled the sheet up to her chin. I just stood there, frozen in the doorway, unable to speak, unable to move, the air thick with betrayal. That was the moment my life, as I knew it, ended, the moment the future I had built in my mind crumbled to dust. The injustice of it all, the pain, the sheer raw hurt washed over me in waves. I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was drowning. Act 1 ends with that image seared into my mind, her face, the stranger's face, the tangled sheets, the absolute devastation. Act 2 began in a blur of pain and anger. I don't remember exactly what I said when I first saw them. I think I just stood there for a long time staring. Then maybe I muttered something incoherent before turning and walking out, closing the door softly behind me, like I was in a dream, a really horrible nightmare I hoped I would wake up from. I stumbled out of the apartment building and back to my car. I just sat there for I don't know how long. The rain had stopped, but the world outside felt gray and miserable, matching the emptiness inside me. I drove home on autopilot, tears streaming down my face, blinding me. I pulled into my parking spot somehow, and just sat there, the car engine still running, the silence broken only by my ragged breathing. I went inside my apartment. It felt alien, cold. The things Sarah and I had bought together felt like mocking reminders of a life that was fake, a lie. The first few days were a blur. I called my best friend Mark, and somehow managed to explain what happened. I think I just sobbed into the phone mostly. He came over right away, sat with me, didn't try to say much, just let me cry, let me rant, let me hurt. I didn't eat, I didn't sleep, I just existed in a haze of pain and disbelief. Sarah tried to contact me, she called, she texted, she even came to my apartment. But I couldn't face her, couldn't look at her, couldn't listen to her excuses, her apologies. They meant nothing, absolutely nothing, compared to the depth of her betrayal. When I finally did talk to her days later, maybe a week, I don't even remember the exact timeline. It was a cold, hard conversation over the phone. She begged me to forgive her, to take her back. She said it was a mistake, that she was lonely, that I was gone for too long, the classic excuses of a cheater. They sounded hollow, pathetic. I told her it was overdone, finished. There was no going back, no forgiveness, no second chances. She had destroyed everything, our love, our trust, our future. She had taken an axe to the foundation of our relationship and brought the whole damn thing crashing down. She cried, she pleaded, she even tried to turn it around, saying I was being cruel, unforgiving. But I held firm. The pain was too deep, the wound too fresh, too raw to even consider letting her back into my life. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it was also the only thing I could do. Ending it with her left a gaping hole in my life, not just the absence of her, but the absence of the future we had planned, the dreams we had shared. They were all gone, poof, vanished like smoke. My days became a monotonous cycle of waking up feeling the crushing weight of sadness existing through the day like a zombie, and then dreading the night because that's when the memories and the pain were the worst. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. My mind replayed the scene in her bedroom over and over, every detail, every expression, every sound. I went back to work, but it was hard to concentrate. My creativity was gone, replaced by a hollow ache. Friends tried to help, inviting me out, trying to distract me, but I wasn't good company. I was quiet, withdrawn, unable to talk about anything else, unable to think about anything else. I saw Sarah around sometimes. Portland is that big of a city, it's impossible to avoid everyone forever seeing her with the man she cheated with. I later found out his name was Kevin. Or even just seeing her alone looking happy was like a fresh stab wound. It felt so unfair. She had shattered my life, and she seemed to be moving on just fine, maybe even better. That's when the anger started to creep in slowly, at first a low simmer beneath the surface of my sadness. Then it grew hotter, stronger, replacing the tears with a burning resentment. Why should she get away with it? Why should she get to be happy while I was left picking up the pieces of my shattered life? I felt like a fool, like I had been played a complete and utter idiot for trusting her, for loving her. I wanted her to hurt like I was hurting. I wanted her to feel even a fraction of the pain she had inflicted on me. But how? I wasn't a violent person. I didn't want to do anything illegal or destructive. I just wanted her to face consequences, to realize the gravity of what she had done. This period felt like rock bottom. I was emotionally exhausted, isolated, filled with a toxic mix of sadness, anger, and a burning desire for some form of justice, some way to balance the scales. My friends were worried about me. I was losing weight. I wasn't taking care of myself. I felt like I was disappearing, sinking into a dark hole. The future I had planned was gone, and the present was unbearable. There seemed to be no way out, no light at the end of the tunnel. I felt utterly powerless, a victim of someone else's selfishness and deceit. It was in this state of despair, this feeling of hitting rock bottom, that a new thought began to form, not a healthy thought, not a constructive one, but a thought born of pain and resentment, a thought of getting even, of making her pay. It was a dangerous thought, but it was also the first thing that had given me a flicker of energy, a sense of purpose, since the breakup, albeit a dark and twisted purpose. I knew I couldn't just let her walk away from this unscathed. She needed to learn that actions have consequences, especially cruel ones. I started thinking about the people in our social circle who knew what she had done, about how her reputation had taken a hit. But that didn't seem like enough. It didn't feel like it matched the magnitude of her betrayal. Subscribe to Tales of Revenge channel for new revenge stories daily. I needed something more personal, something that would hit her where it hurt, something that would make her feel the kind of humiliation and loss I had felt. The idea wasn't fully formed yet, but the desire was clear. I wanted revenge. Act 3 began not with a sudden burst of energy, but with a slow, simmering determination. The despair of rock bottom didn't magically disappear, but it was now tempered by a cold resolve. I stopped wallowing and started thinking strategically. My sadness was still there, a dull ache, but the anger had solidified into a plan. The Reddit post I had read about someone else's similar situation, the part about setting the cheating ex up with a bisexual friend, lingered in my mind. It felt audacious, complex, maybe even cruel, but it also felt like it had potential. I needed an ally, someone who knew Sarah, knew Kevin, knew the situation, and who perhaps felt some sympathy for me or had their own reasons to dislike Sarah or Kevin. That's when I thought of Jessica. Jessica was part of our wider social circle. She wasn't a close friend, but we knew each other well enough. She was smart, funny, and completely unfazed by what other people thought. She also happened to be openly bisexual, something she never hid. The Reddit post mentioned the bisexual friend had a crush on the original poster, but I needed to adapt this to my situation. Jessica and I had always gotten along well. There was no romantic history between us, but I knew she was a good person, and I suspected she didn't approve of what Sarah had done. I messaged Jessica asking if she was free to talk about something important, something personal. We met at a quiet coffee shop not too far from my place, a place where we wouldn't be seen by anyone we knew. I was nervous, explaining everything, laying bare the extent of Sarah's betrayal and my pain. Jessica listened patiently, her expression thoughtful. When I finished explaining the situation, the cheating, the breakup, my current state of misery, I took a deep breath, and then I pitched her the idea, my nascent plan. I told her I had this crazy idea. Maybe it was terrible, maybe it was brilliant, but I needed someone like her to help me, someone who could navigate the social dynamics, someone who was open to thinking outside the box. I explained the core idea, getting Sarah to fall for someone who wasn't who she thought they were, and then pulling the rug out from under her. I didn't immediately mention the bisexual angle. I wanted to gauge her reaction to the general concept of elaborate payback. Jessica was quiet for a moment, processing everything, then she looked at me, her eyes serious. "So you want to hurt her back?" she said flatly, not as a judgment, just a statement of fact. I nodded. "Yeah, I do, not physically, not financially. I don't want to ruin her life completely, but I want her to feel something close to what I felt. I want her to understand that you can't just do something like that to someone and walk away unscathed." I then cautiously brought up the bisexual angle, explaining how it could be a twist, something unexpected. I knew Jessica was comfortable with her sexuality, but I didn't want to make her feel like I was using her in a derogatory way. "The idea is," I explained, "that Sarah is clearly attracted to men. She cheated with Kevin, right? What if she fell for a woman, someone amazing like you, someone she genuinely connected with, someone she thought was straight?" Jessica raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "And the punchline?" she asked. "The punchline," I said, "is that when she's invested, maybe even falling in love, you reveal the truth, that it was all a setup, a carefully constructed plan to make her feel like her world is just as fake and unstable as she made mine feel." Jessica leaned back in her chair, a slow smile spreading across her face. "That is messed up, Ethan," she said, but there was a spark in her eyes, a hint of mischief. "Tell me more." We talked for hours, refining the plan. Jessica had some brilliant insights. She knew Sarah better than I realized, or at least knew how she operated, how she presented herself. The plan was intricate and required patience. Jessica would start spending more time in the same social circles, as Sarah, subtly re-engaging with mutual friends who Sarah still saw. She would position herself as a sympathetic ear, someone Sarah could talk to about the messy breakup with me, perhaps complaining about how awful I was. Jessica had to stomach listening to this and reporting back to me, which I felt bad about, but it was necessary. The goal was for Sarah to see Jessica as a friend, maybe even a confidant at first. Jessica was perfect for this. She was disarming, friendly, easy to talk to. Step 2 was for Jessica to start expressing a newfound interest in women. This had to be done subtly too, perhaps mentioning a date with a woman or commenting on how attractive she found certain female celebrities. The idea was to plant the seed in Sarah's mind that Jessica was exploring her sexuality. Step 3 was the key. Jessica would start flirting with Sarah playfully. At first, then more seriously, she would find opportunities to spend time alone with her, compliment her, make her feel special. This was the riskiest part, hoping that Sarah, who was supposedly straight, would be receptive. Jessica was confident, though she had a charm that was hard to resist, and she felt that Sarah might be more open than she seemed, perhaps curious, or maybe just vulnerable after the breakup with me, and potentially things not working out perfectly with Kevin. The plan was set in motion. Jessica started subtly appearing at the same places as Sarah, joining conversations, making small talk. She would report back to me, sometimes daily, sometimes every few days. Hearing about Sarah's life, hearing her complain about me or talk about Kevin was hard, but it fueled my determination. Jessica was a fantastic actress. She played the role perfectly. She became Sarah's friend, listening to her problems, offering advice, being a shoulder to cry on. Then she started dropping hints about her sexuality, her exploration, her interest in women. Sarah apparently seemed curious, not repulsed. The next step was the flirting. Jessica started complimenting Sarah more overtly, commenting on her appearance, her intelligence, her humor. Sarah seemed flattered, receptive, even blushing. Sometimes, according to Jessica. They started spending more time together, just the two of them, grabbing coffee, going for walks. Jessica was building a connection, a genuine friendship with Sarah, as a foundation for the deception. This part was crucial. It couldn't just be a cold calculation. There had to be some level of real interaction to make Sarah trust Jessica completely. Slowly, Jessica shifted the dynamic from friendship to something more. She invited Sarah over for dinner, cooked for her. They watched movies together. They talked late into the night. The lines between friend and something more began to blur. Jessica was amazing. She described how she would touch Sarah's hand lightly. When she laughed, hold her gaze a little longer than necessary, drop hints about wanting something more meaningful in her life. And Sarah was falling for it, hook, line, and sinker. She started talking about Jessica constantly. According to our mutual friends, she seemed excited, happy, like she had found someone special. She even started pulling away from Kevin, the man she cheated with. Jessica reported that Sarah was getting deeply emotionally invested. She would confide in Jessica about everything, her past, her dreams, her fears. She seemed completely smitten. About 6 months into the plan, Jessica told me that Sarah had told her she was falling in love with her. This was the moment, the turning point. It felt surreal hearing it. This woman who had so carelessly broken my heart was now completely vulnerable to the woman who was helping me get revenge. We knew the time was right, the iron was hot. The final act of the plan was simple and poetic in its symmetry. It mirrored the way I found out about her cheating. The Reddit post mentioned the original poster still had a key to the ex's place. I still had a key to Sarah's apartment. I never gave it back, partially out of inertia, partially because part of me couldn't fully let go until this was done. The plan was for Jessica and I to go to Sarah's apartment before she got home from work, stage the scene in her bedroom, and wait. It felt like a scene from a movie or a play. The tension was incredible. Jessica and I met up a few blocks from Sarah's apartment. We checked that her car wasn't there. We walked to her building, my heart pounding in my chest like it had that dreadful day I first discovered her betrayal. But this time it was different. It wasn't just fear and pain, it was anticipation and a strange kind of calm resolve. We went inside and up to her apartment. I fumbled with the key for a moment before it clicked open. We stepped inside. The apartment felt different this time, not empty, but charged with a nervous energy. We went straight to the bedroom, the scene of her crime, the place where my world had ended. We didn't talk much. The silence was heavy with unspoken emotions and the weight of what we were about to do. We messed up the bed, making it look like we had been there for a while. Then Jessica and I sat on the bed close together. She put her arm around my shoulders. I put my arm around her waist. We positioned ourselves so that when Sarah walked in, the first thing she would see would be us tangled together in her bed. It felt strange being there in her space, in her bed, like an invasion, but it also felt like reclaiming something that was stolen from me. We waited. The minutes stretched into an eternity. Every creak of the building, every distant siren made me jumpy. And then we heard it, the sound of the key in the lock, the door opening, her footsteps in the hallway. This was it, the moment of truth. The bedroom door opened, and Sarah stood there just like I had stood there months ago. Her eyes fell on us on the scene in her bed, and her face registered pure shock, followed quickly by confusion, then disbelief, then utter devastation. It was the exact expression I had seen in the mirror, felt in my soul for months. "Ethan, Jessica, what is this?" she stammered, her voice shaky. I just looked at her, not saying anything, letting her take it all in, letting the reality sink in. She looked at Jessica, then back at me, her face contorted with a mixture of emotions I couldn't fully decipher, maybe betrayal, maybe anger, maybe a dawning horror. You were together?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. And that's when Jessica delivered her line, adapted from our planning sessions, honed for maximum impact. Jessica looked at Sarah, her expression hardening from the playful, affectionate woman Sarah knew to someone cold and distant. "I was never into you, Sarah," Jessica said, her voice clear and cutting like ice. "Not like that. This was all for Ethan." Sarah's eyes widened, her mouth fell open. She looked completely blindsided. What are you talking about, Ethan? What did you do?" She turned to me, her face full of accusation, as if I was the one who had wronged her. "You deceived me. How could you?" she shouted, her voice rising, hysteria creeping in. I couldn't help but let out a dry, humorless laugh. "I deceived you, Sarah," I repeated, my voice calm in contrast to her rising panic. "You deceived me first. You cheated on me with Kevin while we were engaged in this very apartment, likely in this very bed. You destroyed my trust, my heart, our future. This," I gestured between Jessica and myself, "this is consequences. This is you feeling just a fraction of what I felt." Sarah started shouting incoherent things. She was crying openly, the picture of distress. She yelled about how cruel I was, how I had ruined her life, how I was a monster. She completely ignored the fact that her actions were the catalyst for all of this. She didn't seem to grasp the hypocrisy of her accusations. Jessica just sat there watching her expression impassive. Seeing Sarah's face, her absolute breakdown, the tears streaming down her face, the raw pain in her eyes, I should have felt pure, unadulterated satisfaction. And part of me did. There was a deep sense of vindication, a feeling that the universe had finally balanced the scales. But there was also something else, a lingering sadness, maybe even a faint pang of regret. Revenge felt good in the planning and the execution, but witnessing the destruction firsthand was more complex. It wasn't just a triumphant victory, it was messy, it was sad, it was the end of something that had once meant the world to me, even if it had been built on a lie. Sarah continued to scream and cry, Jessica, and I just got up slowly and walked out of the bedroom, out of the apartment, leaving her there alone in the wreckage of her own making. We didn't say anything to each other until we were back on the street, the cool Portland air a welcome contrast to the suffocating atmosphere of her apartment. "Are you okay?" Jessica asked, her voice soft. I nodded. "Yeah, I think so. It's done." We parted ways with a quiet acknowledgement of what we had done, what she had done for me. The aftermath was predictable in some ways. The story spread like wildfire through our social circle, the details getting twisted and exaggerated with each retelling. Some people sided with Sarah, others with me, most were just shocked or entertained by the drama. Sarah's relationship with Kevin apparently didn't last long. After that, I heard she struggled socially for a while. The gossip and the shame followed her. As for me, the revenge didn't magically fix everything. The pain of the original betrayal was still there, but it felt different. It felt like a scar instead of an open wound. I had taken back some of my power. I had shown that I wouldn't be a passive victim. It wasn't a perfect ending. There are no perfect endings in stories like these, but it felt like closure. It allowed me to finally start moving forward, truly moving forward, not just pretending to. Life in Portland continued. The rain still fell. The gray light still filled my apartment. I focused on my work, on my friends, on rebuilding my life on a foundation of honesty and self-respect. Years passed. The sharp edges of the memory dulled, but they never completely disappeared. Every now and then something would remind me of that time, a song, a place, a rainy day. And then out of the blue, 15 years later, I received a friend request on social media. It was from Sarah. The audacity of it, the sheer nerve. After everything that had happened, after the pain she caused, after the elaborate revenge plan, I orchestrated the nerve to just send a friend request, as if nothing had happened, as if we could just reconnect and pretend we were just old acquaintances. I stared at the screen for a long time, thinking about everything: the love, the betrayal, the pain, the revenge, the closure. I didn't accept the request, of course. I didn't decline it either. I just left it there, a ghost in my digital life, a reminder of a chapter I had closed, but could never entirely forget. It was a strange final twist, a demonstration of the enduring impact of human connections, both good and bad, and the sometimes inexplicable ways people try to re-enter lives they have damaged. My life is good now, different than the one I had planned, but good in its own way. I learned a lot from that experience, about trust, about forgiveness, about the double-edged sword of revenge, and about my own resilience. It's a story I rarely tell, but it shaped who I am today. If you want to hear more stories like mine, stories of betrayal, heartbreak, and getting even, then you should subscribe to Tales of Revenge channel for new revenge stories daily.